All right. Hey, everyone. I have had this idea for a while. It's going to be just really casual, is like the whole theme. So I'm going to film it like whilst I'm on my phone. I'm just going to have no added special effects, no real editing, nothing like too, nothing too sort of professional, you could say. Just keep it really like relaxed. So basically, my idea came about because when I was a kid, so I grew up with the Crash PS1 games. So I think my first game was Crash Bandicoot 3. Yeah, heaps of memories playing that with my brothers. And then I found out Crash 2 exists basically, and then I went round to like friends' houses and played a bit of Crash 2, but still kind of preferred 3. Then eventually picked up 1, and then obviously thought it was a bit of a throwback and appreciated where the origins came from, and then played like most of the PS2 games, became like obsessed with CTR, and then also played like a lot of Crash Bash in co-op with my brother, which I still appreciate to today. And then something else from my childhood was that I always used to draw. I'm not great at drawing anymore. Being like 36, I sort of lost the knack of drawing and just didn't keep up with it and pursued other things. But yeah, I used to draw heaps of stuff from, be it Pokemon or any other franchises. And I think that's like one thing that allowed me to sort of come up with this idea. So now that like I'm a bit older and still sort of appreciate my roots with Crash, like, so one thing, one reason I set up my channel was Crash Bandicoot Australia, and decided to collect Crash was because I feel like it was a big emphasis or reason that I moved from the UK to Australia, where I now live. Have seen many Bandicoots since, and wanted to sort of do my part to raise funds for Crash Bandicoot conservation, effectively. So I've been speaking to a number of NGOs and charities in South Australia, but that's kind of a separate discussion to this. If you don't follow my channel already, and you're interested in my Crash collection, it's over on Instagram under the same name, Crash Bandicoot Australia. I'm pretty proud that I've got like one of the largest collections probably in the world, and most definitely the largest in Australia. But yeah, let's get into this. Let's get into like my idea. So, like if I just grab a pen, I feel like whatever the game, whatever the story it is with Crash being like a relatively small franchises, fans either have like what you could say is like an inward approach. If I just draw up here, so they sort of always like look down upon like different things the developers come out with. They sort of just kind of like shun anything new, anything different. I guess the latest Crash Team Rumble's a good example of that. Then the other approach, like fans just have, is like an open approach, just like, wow, this is amazing, and anything that's produced with Crash's face on it is like the best thing ever. So when you've got like that kind of these kind of issues as a developer, before you even begin speaking about ideas, I feel like if you're sat around a table, like you should appreciate like where the opinions of different fans come from, because at the end of the day, you're making the franchise, making the game, supporting the universe for these fans, and you want to be successful, right? So when Rumble and the prior like Wumpa League was getting announced, you heard so many people say like, I just want a Crash Twinsanity remake. I just want a Bash remake. Just do this, just do that. But I've got like basically an open-ended idea as kind of like a platform to build upon that answers all the questions, is my theory. So so going back to like when I was a kid, and also like the thoughts and feelings from like my generation and others, like I just feel yeah, there's ways to pull everything that all the games have learned together and still tie it into the latest main line game as Crash 4. And yeah, and like basically just pull all the ideas together. So my initial thought, like, so this is just my idea, first of all, and then like I'm going to welcome any other ideas that I've been messaged so far, and any that appear in the chat. Not that I can see that on my phone, but yeah, I'll figure that out. But basically, my concept when I was a kid of like the ultimate Crash game was as follows. So before like talking about any of the story, anything like that, we're not really going to even cover that today. I just feel like there's so many like simple elements that you can integrate to make like the ultimate game. So to start with, what we need is like a world, right? Like, what does that look like? I think the obvious answer, and if I was a developer today with whatever time frame and budget and yeah, and all of that like combined, is a simple idea. So if I just draw 3 like representative circles like this, right, or shapes, these are the Wumpa Isles, right? So my idea is like the whole game is going to theme around the Wumpa Isles. It's going to be a total mixture of open world, so being an open world theme, and what makes a game great, right? Like, what makes a game great is things like Zelda Breath of the Wild, where there's just like not much in the way of explanation, and like you're just free to explore, and the more discoveries that there are in the game, the more that you will come across naturally, the more like sort of replay value and interest you get. That applies to things like I recently played the Last of Us games, both of them, and I was just like blown away how every single step I was just like wow, the whole way through, despite like what you may think of it. But not everyone wants an open world game, right? We've seen things like Twinsanity, and we've had Crash Tag Team Racing with its like theme park style. So like from a starting concept, you can take things from Twinsanity, right, and from Crash Tag Team Racing, and input them into this world. However you do that, it's like sort of will come down to the artists. And then my next kind of like main theme around this is that if I just grab a relevant color pen, is that the other aspect to accessing the different worlds and gameplay of Crash is the portals. So in Crash 1, you got like just a generic like stands with like some kind of dust swelling around in Crash 1. And then in Crash 2, it's practically the same thing, but contained in a temple, right? And Crash 3, we obviously have the time portal thingos. So my idea to put them in this world is that you'll start off, and obviously like the starting Insanity Beach type vibes from the previous game is always like a really impactful moment for Crash fans. So hear me out on this one because it's a bit far-fetched, but I think it'd be really cool if there's some kind of like smaller little island over here somewhere, and you start off on this island, and the opening scene is like more, you know, there's no instruction, there's no like story or sort of short cut scene like we get with there could be a short cut scene, but my concept here is that you actually play, if this is like the start, and hear me out, you start playing out as a real Bandicoot. So just picture that for a moment. It's going to be like prior to being captured by Cortex. It's like a bit of a flashback. So I'll just put that in there as a keyword. So it's that in itself calls back to like Crash Bandicoot 4's flashback tapes, etc. Yeah, so it's going to be a flashback. It could be that the forest is on fire, that it's kind of like dramatic, or it's very atmospheric anyway, and you're just sort of playing around as this Bandicoot without much in the way of concept, whilst Cortex is sort of in the background but not really like the main prevalent character at this stage. I thought that also, if this is the start, with playing as like a real Bandicoot, which I've obviously there's been references to before, that we can also have a chance for some real lore here, in terms of like, and this could feed into the story, but the origin of the ancients, who we've only heard about a couple of times in like Crash Bash and otherwise, but I think that that's a really clever concept. And bearing in mind I'm still just talking about the general sort of open world idea, and this will feed into like some of you will be thinking, oh my god, but other hopefully you can wait before I get to the main sort of parts of this idea. If you have the idea of the ancients, then you can tie into the origin of Aku and Uka. I can't bother to write both the double names. And then also the origin of, say, Papu's mask, right? And then lo and behold, you sort of like are tying in heaps of lore, even in like the like inset. And the way I see this being represented is if you're playing as a real Bandicoot, somewhere on this like island, and if there's fire, or if you're just trying to escape running as like a more natural animal before being put under the evolver array, is that you could see the original, if you're not quite aware, like, so both Aku and Uka Uka were originally witch doctors. Some more lore. But the witch doctors could be in the background of the island during the like battle, so to speak, or the panic as it builds. It can start off like atmospheric, more exploratory, but yeah, with like a more Zelda feel. But you could see the witch doctors like battling in the background, and sort of have loose interactions with other animals as you're moving. So yeah, there could be a dingo. There can be a crocodile. You get the idea, right? Starting to write character names instead of animals. Kangaroo, monkeys, etc. Yeah, so there's all these animals. There's this opening scene. It's like huge. It's kind of like impactful. It's like a flashback. And it ends with sort of your memory of being captured. It could then skip forward, and obviously like keeping this tied to like the ancients, to maybe like closer to modern day, and out of like, you know, to me, the remake with Beanox and Nitro Fueled, with all of the characters and all the content they put in Nitro Fueled, Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, you just saw like arguably you had like the most Crash fans behind that game, so new and old. So you saw like what people wanted, right? There was calls for like Nina Cortex. There was calls for the things that we didn't get, like Madame Amberley, Rusty Walrus, and all these like vague characters, the Evil Twins. And there was also a bit of a mention, and I really think this is a great idea to help evolve this idea more than out of what I've got so far. And that is, if you bring in the Evil Twins. So this is where the story, I guess you'd call this area over here the story. The story could then involve the Evil Twins. And what does that do? That allows for the idea, which Marvel and everyone else has done, which is like the multiverse, which I know some people don't like. I know that it's getting overused, but it really fits for the idea of the Crash universe, right? So I feel like if you bring in the Evil Twins, they could be the instigators to open the three different styles of portal. And I'll get back to this concept because people are probably screaming at the camera like, but I want a 2D Crash game, and that's perfectly fine because this idea will allow for all of everyone's ideas all in one place. And I think like however you like evolve from the starting point, like playing as a real Bandicoot and getting like this like sort of wow factor to the opening of the game, rather than just like, hey Crash, can you go do this, a bit of a spin and off you go, which is totally fine. That could like feed into like this could be the prelude, the whole starting thing. But then the like if I put like main start and then prelude, this might get a bit messy. But the main start could be you just waking up on like island number 1, of Crash. God, how do I do this? Crash and Coco start. You could start on a beach. It could also be like the menu, because games do that, right? You play the prelude, it like saps you into the game, then you hit the start. And then I think at this point, you should just be allowed to explore the first island, and like these two will sort of fall in naturally. So going back to the idea of like the portals, right? Portal styles. Crash Bandicoot 1 style, I think you should just be able to discover randomly in the bush. So if I put CB1 as A, Crash Bandicoot 2 with the same style but contained within a temple, right? And Crash Bandicoot 3 as the time or warp portal idea as C. So you start exploring the first island as Crash in this new world. And once I open, like something I call back to quite a lot that I know is a game that's not, it's hated a fair bit, but I do still quite like it. And there's so much detail in there for being such an old game. And that's why I feel like this larger, more ambitious Crash project is possible. And that is Donkey Kong 64. When you play that game, and if you chuck open another tab on your computer and like look up some of the gameplay, if you haven't really played it, there's just so much involved in terms of like pads, multiple characters, different musical instruments that you can play, different abilities, different vehicle levels, different this. And yeah, like it's just got a nice feeling, and the music and stuff, the gameplay with the enemies going around the map of DK64. So this is another story thing, I guess. So I put akin to DK64 because that to me is like a really good reference point. So yeah, you start exploring and you start to realize like, hang on, there's this portal over here. So if I put these, it says a level down here to discover on the first island. There's a level over here. Maybe it's like off into the water and you don't know how to get to it. So there's like exploratory concepts, right? So maybe there's like 4 levels like this. Like there could be heaps more, and that's like also the benefit of this style of a game is that you can offer expansions in relation to new game releases. So this game can be a bit of a hub. I'll put this as like a hub game. I don't know if I'm using the correct terminology, but you get what I mean, right? This is the basis of your universe, and you keep feeding back to this or into this, which I guess they sort of try to do a Crash 4, because Wumpa League and Crash Team Rumble was supposed to be a DLC in Crash 4. We know that because it was on the TV at the start of the level. We know that because they added the internet connection feature to Crash 4 for a random reason. It just feels right that it was going to get added on with the same graphic characters, blah blah blah. So they started to play on this idea, so it feeds onto that, but they just got to like do it better. So yeah, you might explore this way and find this one. You might come this way and explore this one as you sort of go around the edges. And so this is my idea still, but hopefully this gives you the format and the flavor that once this idea is like a bit more fully fledged, there's room for anybody to put their ideas into this. And that's where I'm going to say before like any developers start doing this concept, if they want to, that they just purely and truly engage with fans. Because as we've seen with the last like Crash games and like the social media accounts for Crash 4, the whole Crash Bandicoot account and Crash Team Rumble, etc., engaging with influencers and engaging, like putting up meme posts and things, it falls so flat. Memes died, like in general, like, and people like Wampa Lewis that do memes of the month and stuff, and obviously our big Crash fans, they don't. It sort of shows that, like, you know, you just it's good to be it's good to be a business that's trying to catch on to the most recent trend, but you've also got to put stuff in there that gives this heaps of replay value, because that is the ultimate factor for any video game, right? Like all of our favorite games we go back to for a reason, and that's because they have replay value. And when I look up reviews for games and movies or whatever else, I just always think about it in terms of like replay and what makes me go back. And I feel like it's simple stuff, but if you engage with your fans, and you could use social media to do that, like, hey guys, we want to give Crash like a new power. What power do you? These are the powers that we've got on the table. Could be power 1, power 2, power 3, and like there'll be concept art behind those. Like Crash, there's nothing stopping Crash from the social media channels asking Crash fans, like, hey, which power would you like? We got this one, this one, this one, and then there's a vote, and they put it in there, or it's a bit of a trick, and they put all 3 in there. You know, there's so much like potential that you can do to keep fans engaged. So anyway, back to the start. Level 1, you know, Crash wakes up in a hammock. He's like sipping on Wumpa juice, a Wumpa whip, to call back to CTTR. And you start exploring, and you find the first style of the portals from Crash 1. But you may notice that there are like temples and hidden temples that are sealed, and you can't access them yet, right? So at some point, there'll be a way to access additional levels that at least the entry is like Crash 2. And all of these will obviously be access points to 2D levels. So it's going to be a 3D open hub world with 2D levels. And people will say, like, yeah, I like the Crash 1 map where you just walk to a blip and then you can enter that level. That's fine, because these portals will appear either from the start, or like if this one is released in 2025 as part of this theoretical game, maybe you see this one, or like see like an island with a bit of a sand patch on it, and you feel like or believe there should be a portal there, but then like later in the game, like so late 2025, it appears. Maybe it's DLC, maybe it's not. The other option is they can add it to the game, like in 2026. You know, so like there's reasons that these can appear later, potentially linked to characters coming into the game. And you notice I haven't really spoke about any characters yet, except for the evil twins. And I feel like these are such a great link to a brand new Crash title. And yeah, still, for those of you joining, this is just my idea, like laying the table first and the groundwork. So the concept is that there's 3 islands, that it's more of an open world, but the evil twins are back, and there's this concept of a multiverse, which means you can do anything from any Crash game. It means you can link to all the references in Crash 4 with like the fact we got a different Torna, the fact that Crash and Coco are missing in her world. You've got the 2 cortexes, you've got the 2 trophies. It just literally allows for everything. All the ideas, like of any comment section of any Crash Team, Crash Bandicoot video by any YouTuber, or any comment section or Reddit post, or meme. So yeah, anyway, so as you progress, you'll just basically come across temples. You'll somehow get access to the second island. I'm not entirely sure the best way that you should go about that, but it could just be a more simple way, or it could be a slightly more complex, like you've got to find parts for Coco to fix a plane, and then you get what kind of stupid planes? 1 second. It's going to be a pink plane. Right. So, and just in case you're not aware, that's a plane. So yeah, maybe you fix this plane for Coco, and that gains you access to the second island with some kind of like airstrip thing. And this could just be like on the beach, maybe at the start. Not too sure. Doesn't even matter because it's kind of like beyond the idea of the video. Once you fix the plane, that also gives you access to like maybe the like rings in the sky. I was going to put sky rings, but I just messed that up. Like sky rings, or sort of actual like vehicle levels, but you know what I mean. So like, there could even just be like collectibles in the sky, right? Like similar to, again, like Zelda, and other like games that people sort of just play for hours upon hours upon hours. And that's one thing I want to mention, is that someone mentioned recently, I saw in like a main post somewhere, that you can beat Crash 4 in like 4 hours, and then beyond that it's all like just rehashed like inverted mode and stuff like that, so the content's just really small. Whereas I feel like with this model there's going to be like not endless stuff to explore, but like at least 3 islands worth of stuff to explore. And then so where do you go from here, and how do you add like the greater content? So imagining that there's the Crash Bandicoot 1 2D access to 2D levels that a whole team can just be working on themselves, right? And then like I said, there'll be a few more of these Crash 1 style portals on the second and third island too. But to not make this too messy, when you're on the second island, you might get access to temples. That might be through like Pura, it might be through Papu Papu. That ties back to the idea of like the origin of Papu's masks and the theme sort of around the ancients being like the whole story behind this. But yeah, once you get access to these temples, there'll obviously be a lot more like, Crash 2 style levels. So there'll be these like temples to find. There'll be temples on here that you didn't know about, potentially under the ground or over in the ocean. So yeah, and there'll be some on the third island too. And then like the story could evolve, and then could be like these portals like from Crash 3 style that take you to different like points in time, medieval theme, like all the things that people love, the future tense. But all of the worlds, there have to be a reason to go to all these sort of different worlds and different time periods to feed back into this overall hub world kind of story that ties back to this idea of the ancients. So just imagine the whole map, whichever island you're on, and however far you are in the game, there'll be like different these different style of portals. So that's like the overview of how to access stuff. I guess like say by the third island as well as the plane, you might get access to like Coco's I'm going to say water scooter thingo. I can't actually think of the name right now. So you might get access to her hovercraft. I'll just put this in blue. Coco's. Damn, I'm kicking myself for not remembering what this is called. But yeah, like, so then you get access to things on the water, or potentially like Crash's scuba gear. And this like idea also falls back to what we had with Crash on the Run on the mobile, where they had an overview of a map, and they had like little things on there you could spot, like scuba tanks, and then so everyone was kind of like, oh, like we're going to get some kind of use of that at some point. And the idea was there, but obviously it just never got fleshed out because it didn't get the support. But I feel like if you are going for a new mainline title. I'm not saying that this could be Crash 5. I'm saying that this could just be a platform as a hub, and then Crash 5 could build from this. Because at the end of the day, you've got like the idea of this multiverse and the portals. But if I just move this out of the way a little bit, if I expand a little bit more on like the multiverse, what does that also mean? That means that we can get a proper story for Crunch. I'll put Crunch over here, and then if like, because there's a heap of people that want Crunch in the game. How do you do that? Well, potentially, like by the time you're around on the third island, you free Crunch, and he comes with like the power of like strength. I mean, like obviously, right? And then maybe you can like let players or like use either he can like you can either you can escort him or play as him or like hack him, I'm gonna say, which sort of goes to Crash and the Titans and whatever, like mind control stuff. So it could either be you're playing as him but mind controlling, or just literally playing as him and you can swap to him. But yeah, so Crunch, this is still another idea that I had too. Crunch can come with this power of strength, and so you can use that on any of the islands where there's like some breakaway like wall somewhere, and then that like might give you access to like another level that you weren't previously able to get to with Crash, or like you may have to save Crunch over here to then get access to like Coco's vehicle hovercraft thingo. So that's the way I see like that Crunch can be brought back to the game in that like you can actually play with him because he's like stepbrother of Crash, etc. And yeah, like so there can be this like multi-level approach to the game. You can obviously start off as Crash, play as Crash. When you get to like the main starting point of the game, you can play as Coco, and then maybe she like is required to fix like particular things to allow Crash to get access. Like they can work in tandem, right? Like similar to, I don't know whether that's me thinking back to just recently playing The Last of Us, where you're a guy and a girl, young girl, and you can like you both sort of help each other out simply, but done very effectively. Or it's like more complex than that, linked to like different powers and things. The other one is Nina. Again, you can unlock her somehow, and she comes with like the grappling power. Maybe that can be like defined better and different to Torna somehow. But you get what I mean. You can introduce these characters to access different parts of the level, different platforming, different styles, and like you have to play as different characters to get to 100% completion effectively, or 106 or whatever, like it shouldn't be that we just collect these gems and we shouldn't collect like just things like, because it's not a good feeling to play like the inverted mode like 4 separate times or 8 separate times just to like get a collectible. Like the collectible should just be out throughout this level anyway. If I just put I will do it properly. If I put a purple gem here and a purple gem over here, like these can be like hidden or not. They may like gain you access to saving Crunch, who's over here, you were told. Or they may be like to gain like access to the other island or whatever. Like, so that's what I was initially thinking, is that like, basically there's a hub world, like tag team racing, that you've got like 3 islands. It can be more, it can be less. There can be a hidden one, there could not. You've got all the different styles of portals from all the Crash games. It's open world, more sort of in line with Twin Sanity. So then like Twin Sanity people happy. It's sort of got links to tag team racing, so those people are happy. It's got 3D play. It's got 2D levels. But then, what if like you literally don't want access to the hub? Like you don't want to play the 3D and you just want to play the 2D. Well, like obviously fast travel is a thing in all these games, so there's no reason that like after like getting access to all of these, you can just like jump back to them, potentially through some device with Coco or one of the other characters like Tropy's staff or something like that. I just mentioned him, so let's put Tropy over here too. Another character that should be fully fledged. But yeah, this doesn't encompass every game, right? It encompasses the like Crash 1 to 3 concepts. It encompasses like to Insanity. It encompasses a few of the vehicles. Maybe let's just add another couple of other vehicles over here. I would also like to see, and I feel like needs to be in this is kind of like the scuba. Wow, this is going to be terrible. Scuba gear. I can't draw with one hand. Anyway, you got scuba gear. How to tie this back to Wrath of Cortex? I think you need like the mech suit. This was going to be terrible. But yeah, that's not the idea. And also, because I know people don't like the idea of like too many vehicle levels, but these can like be optional towards completion or like optional towards unlocking skins and the other stuff that people liked. I'm not a fan of adding like skins and like heaps of random stuff like that, but maybe we can have like better game modes, maybe like powers. I don't know, there's so many games out there, like whether it's Grand Theft Auto or whatever, where you collect things and you get items back. Like you get weapons or you get abilities or you get things to add to as upgrades to like what you've currently got. So yeah, I think like that there should be scuba, there should be like a mech, there should be the plane, there should be the like the kind of the typical things from all the main games. Like we don't really need like Coco's mini scooter. But then this could be like an Easter egg, right? Like there could be on the third island like a little let's go right, like skate park, which will come back into another idea, and like that can include like Crash's Coco's mini scooter and Crash skateboarding kind of. But yeah, it could just be like a thing that's just for fun, that's over there somewhere, like when you play I can't even think of a game like off the top of my head where there's just like something on the side that someone's made for the fun of it. The example from The Last of Us I just finished is where like there's a snowy part. You're in a town and there's heaps of snow, and you walk up a side street that goes for like ages away from the opposite direction of where you're meant to go, and there's kids having like a snowball fight and playing in the snow, and it's just hyper realistic, and it's just like the artists and animators and stuff put that in the game, and it's just off to the side for no reason. Doesn't do anything for the story. So that could be the same with like basically skating or anything else. And we've seen like even in Tony Hawk's where you can press a button and jump into like a different sort of mode. So there's like no saying that you can't do that. Something off the side of all of this that I've thought about too, going back to the whole like story thing, which is getting quite long, is like the idea of having like a Crash TV show or whatever else, right? This also falls back to the idea that people say like with this type of like inward view and outward views. My God. Inward and outward views when it comes to like Crash ideas. Some people just like, you can't do that, and other people just like, wow, that's amazing, best thing ever. This Crash thing's the best thing, regardless of what his face is on. So there's like this dichotomy that goes on, but you can balance all of that out. With the Crash TV show, I've heard like so many people say, yeah, but Crash doesn't talk, so it's an issue. But I've said a couple of times before, if you look at franchises like Ice Age, with the character called Scrat, Crash is basically Scrat, and who doesn't talk, who's goofy, more akin to like Looney Tunes and stuff. So like if they can make TV shows and like basically half a movie out of Scrat, then why can't they do that for Crash, right? Like that just seems like obvious. But again, things like a TV show could tie into this, like, yeah, as I said, like hub game. I'm going to keep coming back to that point too. But yeah, going back to the vehicles and this idea, like what's missing from this? Like when people were talking about Rumble, when they were talking about Nitro Fueled, they were saying like, yeah, but I just want Twinsanity, I just want Crash Bash. Well, how does that fit into this? How does Crash Team Rumble and Bash and that kind of theme of a game fit into an open world hub that's got 2D levels like throughout? Well, at some point there's got to be loading screens. So I had the idea of this is also now going to go this way, down and across, like Crash Bash. Obviously it's a tricky point when the developers talk about this, because you're automatically only speaking to like a minority of Crash fans, even if it's a big minority. Do you put Crash Bash in as a loading screen? I say put it in, but what I really mean is like, is there a transition between here and here? Is there a point where somebody, be it like nitrous oxide or Uka pulls your character like as you're traveling in this plane across, and you get sort of teleported to another dimension where you've got to like do sort of Bash style mini games? But yeah, regardless, you're going to want like mini games sort of represented somehow, whether that's with things like the skate park, and yeah, I'll talk about that again, or otherwise. I think you can like please Crash Bash fans by either having Bash in as a loading screen. I think the bloody waiting room lobby hub on Nitro Fueled was like the perfect opportunity to do that. Like it would have been so cool to have like the characters of Nitro Fuel battling it out in like a simplified Bash game. Like don't worry about the backgrounds and stuff, just like the gameplay, to then get some kind of like power up that were like help you in the race and give you a bit of a slight advantage or whatever. Like I think that would have been so cool, rather than just sitting in a lobby sometimes for like 5 minutes straight staring at like screensaver type animations. And games these days are capable of doing loading screens like and making it seem part of flawless gameplay. Again, my recent playthrough of The Last of Us showed me that like you're lifting up a garage door, and that's like sneakily the loading screen as your characters move into the inside of the building, like, or just the way hallways connect and you have to crawl through some space, and the crawling animation is like the loading screen. It's genius. And I think that Crash Bash can be put in that way. And the other option is to stick it in as like a feature, like an actual part of the game or feature. So over here somewhere there could be, I don't know, like you've crossed the second island, and then you've got, in order to get access to the third, or in order to access more sort of either Crash 1, 2 or 3 type levels as A, B, C's throughout the map. I realize I put those as 3s. Yeah, maybe like Tiny Tiger, maybe he's over here, and he obviously has some kind of arena, pun kind of intended, and there's nothing to say that this arena couldn't like look like or be even like a Crash Team Rumble. I'm going to put Rumble because I can't write CTR for that. Crash Team Rumble type of arena, where you have to like battle it out with Tiny, but this arena could also feature mini games like Crash Bash, or the other option is like under the ground somewhere, or I don't know, like other worldly in terms of the multiverse dimensions thing. That's how you bring Crash Bash into it, because we've got everything else. We've got open world, we've got the 2D levels. So we can bring Bash into this somehow, and there needs to be a whole team of people on Crash, like the Crash Bash minigame elements. There needs to be a whole team on the whole like 2D level design. So that's 2 teams. I've never developed a game, but this is what I imagine sort of happens around a table. And then there's a whole team that ties that together with the story, and that's kind of a secondary team to build like the whole hub and this open world concept. So yeah, this is my just loose concept. I knew that this would probably take an hour to discuss, and then I'll like try and like look up the comments and incorporate what people have told me so far. So you've got to just overview again. You start off in like a prelude where you actually play as a real Bandicoot, and it's like a very aesthetic, artistic and like atmospheric type situation where you're exploring the forest, Legends of Zelda style, where like you're not told any instructions, you just kind of interact with other animals. It allows for like the introduction of some like out there concept like the ancients that we've heard about before, and like really inject proper Crash lore into the thing. And I've heard people say like you don't need lore in like a platforming game, and I kind of disagree. I think that the lore makes it, right? Like the lore really feeds into the replay value of a game. It's the reason why people cosplay as particular characters as events. It's the whole. I feel like it's part of the whole thing. So, in order to get lore, I think like we need a big tie between starting a Crash multiverse and a link to like the history of the ancients, which gives us the history of Aku and Uku Uka as the witch doctors, maybe battling in the background, maybe even the history of Papu, and bring in like the elementals and everyone else, and like these different like interact with all these different animals. Then you explore the main islands. That's the basic concept. What's missing still though is quite literally Crash Team Racing. And I know this probably actually just means there's going to be a whole team on the vehicle side of things, which can tie into like how you access different islands on a plane or water scooter or whatever it be, or scuba. Obviously with scuba there can be hidden crystals and gems like in the middle of the ocean. Like if I just draw a gem over here, it's terrible. This is all ocean obviously where there's no islands. But yeah, I think you get like the picture, but I feel like what's missing is the Crash Team Racing element. So that's a harder one, and there's demand for Twinsanity remake, there's demand for Bash integration, there's demand for a 3D world, there's demand for a proper like just traditional 2D world, like 2D game that's like literally the same as the first 3 original games, or a remake of Crash Team Racing, right? I think that if I just draw this, I'm going to have to make this the best drawing I've done. Probably will be. There needs to be like, not bad. I'll put K for cuts. How do you also integrate a sequel to Crash Team Racing into this? And remember I said like this can work as a hub, so it can just start off as like, this is right, we're going to reset the Crash world, we're going to have a budget that's 2 or 3 times greater from Activision than like Crash 4. We're gonna sort of try and address all of the questions and like ideas and whatever from fans. So yeah, how do you integrate a Crash Team Racing sequel? Well, I think that like beyond this idea of the islands, and this could tie in kind of to like, this is going to be terrible too, but that's a minecart. I was about to say that there's nothing stopping developers from like, these are the islands, they start off how they are. Then there's you're just playing through the first time, through the second one, you get to Tiny's arena, whatever. What's stopping them from saying like, well, here's a DLC, and it's 6 months later, and now there's a racetrack on the island, connecting the islands, like whatever. Just go draw shapes. This could be like Cortex Castle. And when I get to Cortex Castle, I sort of want it to be more like when you get to Hyrule Castle in Legends of Zelda. You know what I mean? This massive, like, multi-leveled, maybe a sky part. And when I play like the lab, I want to like get to the lab and like destroy the lab or whatever that's like housing all these animals and creating nitrous boxes, crates. I want it to be sort of be big. Is I guess the whole theme of this video. And yeah, I just felt like no one's ever broached this before, like getting ideas down on paper, talking about how to integrate everyone's ideas. So yeah, like you can have racetracks on the island, right? Like when I think of what this game should be like, if I summarize over here, it should be like, it should take game concepts from Zelda. And I'm not joking, like there's just like so many parts of that concept where you just start out and there's no instructions, and you're free to explore the world, and you make all these, like, you make about 60 discoveries for the whole game. Like, it was so long of me playing before I realized you can surf on the shield, which some people would probably, you know, discover straight away, but it just doesn't, it never explains that until you talk to one guy under a tree. I think it should take from Donkey Kong 64. That was actually the first one I mentioned. And I think it should take from what I was thinking as well as like Burnout, and I can't remember which one is the Burnout where you have like an open world, right? Where you just drive around and you find like events, because then this idea of events can tie into the idea of Crash Bash. It can tie into the idea of DLC content. It can tie into any part of the game. And this is starting to transition now to where I talk about the feedback I've got from you, from different Crash fans, where yeah, like basically like trying to wrap this all up. So yeah, okay, maybe you explore these islands and you unlock different styles of portals to different styles of events. So like the original games, maybe the arena theme is the Bash theme, but maybe it just like is where Rumble fits in terms of like lore, if anything. Yeah, like maybe there's like all these different characters and how the characters tie into the gameplay. How you build from this point. Like, so if you imagine we've spent budget on like developing this as an actual game, yeah, it's like addressing with the aim of addressing all of the sort of main concerns of, yeah, or ideas of Crash fans. I think you tie it together by like establishing this and then putting it out in terms of like the open world cross 2D world concept, that has a fleshed out story with like the evil twins, that like, yeah, maybe even brings in, I mentioned Nina before, so obviously somewhere maybe on the second island too, that's the school, and that's maybe where you get to play as Nina, but to fully flesh out like the school as well, and many people have said that there's like all these different elements of all of the previous Crash games, where like certain aspects have just been like lackluster, forgotten, like, or just thrown in and sort of felt rushed, if anything. Yeah, so like another one is Engine's ship. notice obviously it's like offshore. So again, that could be a whole other area that you didn't know about when you were playing at the start. You didn't know Engine was going to be in this. And he's another character I think should be like a bit of a feature. And again, like all of these I'm saying about because these are ones that need doing properly. So Engine I think needs to come with his own mech that might tie into that one. And like Rocket's jetpack. And I don't think that this is impossible. I don't think that like all these ideas, I don't think it will be rushed. I don't think there's too much, even though this looks like I've just done this on one sheet of paper. And this is why I'm sort of referring to it as like the ultimate game. And yeah, how, someone mentioned that, won't there be copyright behind this? And like I said, well, no, because I'm not showing or sharing anything, any music or any like actual features. I think that like in order to guide all of this, you're going to need like, well, a guide. So I actually came up with my own character that I feel like would be a pretty cool idea. And if people that follow my page would already know about this, but I came up with this idea of what I called the one parrot or one parrot. And anyway, I came up with this one parrot idea. It's a terrible drawing, but maybe the whole story, if we to go back to story briefly, is that the ancients, we learn a bit more about of them in the prelude where you play as a real Bandicoot. You see like the original representations of the witch doctors with Aku and Uka. You learn about Papu's mask, like all this stuff crammed into like some immense starting wow factor scene before you get to the main menu at the start of the game. Main menu. And I think that to guide you there needs to be like almost a new character, because despite how everyone loves Aku and things, I think like he's kind of been overused, like whether it's nitro fueled. I know it's a remake, but he's always kind of like the guide, right? And I know that's like something that's dear to Crash fans, but I think how cool would it be if the concept is you're starting off on the beach with Coco, and portals open, it's the evil twins, they somehow imprison Aku, and the whole mission of like the whole island, all the islands, is to find out what happened to Aku, maybe even partner with Cortex like kind of halfway somewhere. Maybe 3 islands isn't enough, it might be 5 at most. But maybe one of the islands is just the theme park, right, from TTR. I'll just put that there. But I feel like there needs to be a new guide, so I came up with the idea of a new character as the one parrot as just an example, but and I'm using it here as an example, not as a promotion. But yeah, we needed like a new guide, and the parrot it's good because it's an animal. It's good because it's an animal that would be found in like the theoretical place of the Wampa Isles. It's good because like it's a parrot, so it can fly between the islands. It's good because Crash could probably have like a really good association to a bird, like it can land on his shoulder. We've seen birds on like the signs in Crash Team Racing, and there's been birds throughout, but they've like not really been used. Maybe like there can be a cute interaction where the parrot carries Crash at some stage or whatever, or you see the baby parrot at some point with baby Crash. I don't know, like it ties into so many like bits of lore with Crash, like how they kind of had pets when they were kids, and Polar. The like the different art from I think it's Nina's castle level from Nitro Fueled as the Beanox level. yeah, you see like images where they had pets, and obviously tying back to the idea of the evil twins also being birds, also being pets at some stage. So yeah, there could be like, anyway, a new guide, and the guide like helps you around the level. Once you're sort of past that part of like initial explorations, maybe maybe you're flying and like you hit, maybe like the bird, like is wherever you land the plane is how like you then interact with the bird. But anyway, that's just like an actual one of my ideas, I guess. It's like having a new guide, and yeah, feeding back to the ancients. And once this is all established, once you've gone and explored all these places, there's nothing to say that there can't be DLCs. Again, coming into like engaging with the fans, putting out like social media posts to find out like what's missing. Like we've got the characters that you've missed from past games, we've got areas that you've missed from past games, we've got greater lore on different things. Like it can even come down to things like how Coco hates butter, I think it is the meme, and also like the lore that's written in one of the game manuals and stuff. Like, how does the idea of just butter play into the game? Like maybe there's areas that only Crash can gain access to because he can touch the butter. I don't know, just like this can be so many things. And this yeah, all ties back to other platformers, and this is where we're moving into the concept of DLCs. Other platformers being Banjo-Kazooie, and how those characters interact living in their home, and how they explore platforming worlds. And like the other one, which I'll mention in a second, and can go over here under the characters to add. So if I put DLC, and we are getting there. I want like, and this is also addressing one of the first. Nick Creative Media had the idea and wrote to me to say, what about introducing other